The orange visitor sleeve around my badge was still warm from the laminator when Denise Larkin laid a 6-hour training schedule across my desk and trapped my red wax pencil beneath it. "Your replacement starts now," she said. The glass walls of the dispatch office turned her normal speaking voice into an announcement. "You'll do it for free." 3 route coordinators stopped pretending not to listen. It was Friday morning, my last day at Bellwether Linen Services. Someone had already peeled my name from the operations board. A pale rectangle remained where Mara Vance, client operations, had been for 11 years. In my chair sat Tyler Crow, a man I had met 9 minutes earlier. He'd brought his own keyboard and a coffee mug that said, "Ask me about pivot tables." He looked 35, nervous, and decent enough to be ashamed of where he was sitting. Across the room, the Monday route for St. Vincent Medical Center was circled twice in red. Denise kept looking at it. That frightened me more than losing the badge. I pulled the training schedule from under my pencil. Denise had booked every minute until 4:30, including a working lunch and something called culture continuity. "My final pay covers work performed through today," I said. "Correct. Training is work." Denise's smile tightened by 1 careful millimeter. "Which is why you're expected to perform it. You just said I'd do it for free. I said there would be no additional transition compensation. So we agree on the arithmetic." A sound escaped from the dispatch floor. It might have been a cough. It might have been Angela Ruiz choking on her tea. Denise turned toward the glass and everyone became deeply interested in their monitors. She was good at that. Denise could make 8 adults feel caught passing notes in church without raising her voice. She wore a charcoal suit that never wrinkled, even inside a laundry plant where humidity curled paper off clipboards. Her competence was real. That was what made being cornered by her feel so personal. She set a blue folder beside the schedule. "Your severance agreement is in there. The offer expires at 5. Of course it did. My husband Evan and I had enough accessible savings for 3 months if nothing else broke. Something else always broke. His custom cabinet shop had closed in January, leaving us with a silent table saw in our garage and $28,000 in equipment debt. The health insurance at Bellwether covered us through the end of the month. The severance would buy breathing room. Denise knew all of it. Human Resources knew which employees had changed their direct deposits, requested hardship withdrawals, or asked too many questions about COBRA. Tyler shifted in my chair. "I can stand." "That won't be necessary," Denise said. "It's necessary to me," he replied, and stood. That surprised both of us. I put my bag on the spare credenza and took the folding chair we used when drivers came in to dispute shortages. One leg was half an inch shorter than the others. Every time I moved, it clicked against the floor. Denise tapped the schedule. "By the end of today, Tyler needs full operational readiness for the regional client portfolio." Full readiness in 6 hours? He has extensive analytical experience. Tyler's mug sat between us like evidence. "I've managed network planning for 2 branches," he said. "Mostly hotels and food service." "Any acute care hospitals?" "No." "Any surgical conversions?" His eyes flicked toward Denise before returning to me. "Not directly." Denise said, "Mara, this is not an interview." "No. Interviews happen before you give someone a job." She slid the severance folder closer. "Culture continuity begins at 9:15. I pulled a yellow legal pad from my drawer and wrote 843 HR directed, same-day transfer of regional portfolio. Then I turned the pad so Denise could read it. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Training record. You'll want proof I completed the handover." "I don't think that level of formality is necessary." "I do." Tyler opened his laptop. "I'll keep a duplicate." Denise looked at him for a long second. "I'm sure Mara has a system." "I'm about to learn it." Another surprise. Denise left without saying goodbye. Her heels made 4 clean strikes down the tile, then softened when she reached the rubber floor by the loading docks. I sharpened my wax pencil with the brass blade on my key ring. A curl of red fell onto the schedule. Tyler watched me. Am I allowed to apologize? You're allowed to ask questions. That sounds like a no. It's an answer you can work with. He nodded and sat in the folding chair instead of mine. The bad leg clicked under him. First question, he said. Why does St. Vincent have 2 circles? I looked through the glass. Angela was standing now, one hand pressed to her headset as she listened to a driver. Behind her, the load board showed 73 routes in 4 colors. Hotels were blue, hospitals red, long-term care green, and anything Calvin Rusk had promised before checking capacity was usually written in black because that was the marker he carried. Street. Vincent had Monday written beside it in black. A circle means confirmed, I said. 2 circles? One from dispatch, one from the client. And the box around the bed count? Unresolved. He zoomed in with his phone camera. It says 384. The current hospital has 384 staffed beds. Their new surgical wing opens Monday. What's the new total? That's one of your questions for culture continuity. He smiled despite himself. You don't like that phrase. I've worked here long enough to remember when it meant teaching people the Christmas raffle rules. Bellwether occupied a converted bottling plant near the river, a low brick building with steam lifting from roof vents, even in July. We processed close to 90,000 pounds of linen on a busy weekday. The public-facing version involved white sheets rolling through enormous machines. The real version was wet lint, alkaline detergent, broken cartwheels, missing gowns, blood-red soil bags, and people making hundreds of small decisions fast enough that nobody upstairs noticed. I started Tyler with the route map. This is Dock 3, I said, tapping a laminated layout. St. Vincent receives before 6 because their public elevators become useless after visiting hours start. Driver checks in with Lou at security, not the central desk. If Lou is off, call facilities. Never leave carts outside the cage. Why? They disappear. Who steals 6-foot carts of hospital sheets? Everyone who suddenly needs a 6-foot cart. He typed that, then paused. Is that a joke or procedure? Yes. At 9:10, Angela pushed through the office door with her headset crooked over one ear. She was 50, compact, and possessed of the terrifying calm of someone who had raised 3 adult sons and dispatched truck drivers through 2 hurricanes. Darnell's liftgate is sticking again, she told me. Fleet says Wednesday. Put him on Route 12. Give Nina the box truck. Nina hates the box truck, Tyler said, reading from a driver preference column on his screen. Angela examined him. The replacement. I'm Tyler. You know how to back a box truck into the Mercy dock? No. Then Nina's opinion outranks yours. He added something to his notes. Fair. I told Angela to document the liftgate problem in the maintenance log and copy Tyler. She didn't move. What? I asked. You still coming to my cookout next month? Denise had scheduled my termination meeting on Wednesday, then asked me to keep it confidential until Friday to preserve team stability. As a result, I had spent 2 days letting people talk to me about next month. Yes, I said, if I'm still invited. Angela's face changed. Don't be stupid. That's not a proper RSVP, Tyler said. She looked at him again, this time with the smallest amount of approval. You can stay until lunch. When she left, Tyler asked, how many people know what's happening? Everybody knows something is happening. That's how plants work. I was told you were moving into independent consulting. My pencil stopped over the map. Who told you that? Calvin. He said the restructuring aligned with your plans. My plans were to replace my roof before the next storm. Tyler took his hands off the keyboard. For what it's worth, I didn't know they were terminating you. The position was described as a regional integration promotion. You moved here? Signed a lease Tuesday. There it was, the ordinary cruelty underneath corporate vocabulary. They had used both of us. I was supposed to resent Tyler enough to make him fail, and he was supposed to be grateful enough not to inspect the chair. Do you have the job description? I asked. He pulled up the document. The title was Regional Integration Analyst. Half the responsibilities were mine. The other half belonged to two branch supervisors whose names had also disappeared from calendars that week. Salary range, 72 to 80,000. I made 96. Calvin could remove 3 experienced employees, install 2 analysts, and show more than $100,000 in annual savings before quarter end. If the service held together for 90 days, he would look brilliant. If it didn't, people like Angela would work 12-hour shifts until it appeared to. At 9:15, a calendar notification appeared on Tyler's screen. Culture continuity, Mara/Tyler. Under location, it said all operational areas. Wear hearing protection, I told him. The plant swallowed conversation whole. We walked beneath pipes that sweated overhead and past the soil sort line, where workers in aprons and face shields opened bags from hospitals. The air changed every 20 feet. Hot cotton, bleach, steam, something metallic. Tyler's polished shoes collected gray lint before we reached the tunnel washers. I introduced him to Reggie Sloan, the wash floor supervisor who had worked at Bellwether for 19 years and trusted exactly 6 people. Reggie shook Tyler's hand. "You the Excel man?" "Apparently that's traveled fast. You ever unclog a wet sheet from a press?" "No." "Good. Means your shoulders still work." I showed Tyler how loads were sequenced by soil class, fabric type, and client requirement. He asked intelligent questions, especially about the difference between rated machine capacity and what the plant could actually sustain when dryers backed up. "Corporate models us at 107,000 pounds, he said. "Corporate also models 30 minutes of daily equipment downtime." "What's real? On a forgiving week? 6 hours. He looked toward Reggie. Reggie nodded. "That's why we don't let spreadsheets turn valves." Tyler typed the figure into his notes. "Was this included in the regional capacity report?" "I submitted it every month. My version shows 30 minutes. Then your version has been improved." We moved to finishing, where sheets rose in snapping white waves through the ironer. At the folding station, a woman named Pearl grabbed my wrist and drew a red line across the back of my hand with a fabric crayon. "For luck," she said. "You've never done that before. You've never been fired before." Tyler pretended to inspect a stack of pillowcases. By 10:30, his notes had become less tidy. Questions multiplied faster than answers. Bellwether's procedures were documented, but procedures assumed ordinary volume, working equipment, and clients who ordered what they used. Mara's rules, as dispatch called them, lived in route annotations and monthly variance reports. St. Vincent hoarded thermal blankets before holiday weekends. Mercy returned other hospitals' gowns. The Grand Regency reported shortages whenever its banquet occupancy exceeded 80%, although the linen was usually locked in housekeeping closets. None of it made me irreplaceable. It made me experienced. Experience could be transferred. It simply could not be compressed into 6 hours because Calvin wanted the savings dated Friday. We returned to the office and found Denise waiting beside my desk. She had moved the blue severance folder squarely to the center. "How is the transition progressing?" she asked. Tyler answered before I could. "We'll complete the scheduled modules, but full operational readiness isn't possible today." Denise's gaze settled on him. "Mara has maintained comprehensive documentation." "She has. There are unresolved capacity issues tied to Monday." The faintest muscle moved in Denise's jaw. I noticed because I had been watching her face across difficult tables for 8 years. "What capacity issues?" she asked. "St. Vincent's conversion volume," Tyler said. "The plant figures I received don't match actual sustainable throughput. That project has executive oversight." "Who's the operational owner?" Denise looked at me. "Mara, have you withheld project information?" There it was. Not concern. Adaptation. "I haven't been assigned to a St. Vincent conversion project," I said. "You manage the account. I manage existing service. Nobody authorized new par levels, delivery frequency, or opening inventory through me." Denise turned to Tyler. "Give us a moment." He stood but didn't leave. Since this affects the handover, I think I should hear it. I wasn't asking what you think. He took his mug and walked out. His face had gone red. Denise waited until the door closed. You are very close to turning an amicable separation into a performance matter. Amicable for whom? Calvin believes you can leave with your reputation intact. My reputation is the reason St. Vincent still takes his calls. She lowered her voice. Then protect it. Finish the handover. Mark the account transferred. Sign your release. You receive 10 weeks' salary and everyone moves forward. I picked up the red pencil. Transferred to whom? Tyler. He just told you he isn't ready. He will be. By Monday? Her silence answered before she did. I went to the load board and drew a red box around St. Vincent. Inside it, I wrote, Client conversion owner not assigned. Denise stared at the words. Remove that. It's accurate. It's inflammatory. It's wax pencil. For 1 second, anger stripped the polish from her face. Then it vanished. Calvin will be here at noon, she said. I suggest you reconsider how expensive you want this day to become. She left the office. Tyler came back in carrying his laptop, but not his joke mug. He read the box on the board, opened a folder I had never seen, and turned the screen toward me. At the top was a St. Vincent presentation, dated the previous afternoon. The first slide promised a seamless Monday conversion under the personal direction of Bellwether's Senior Client Operations Specialist. My name was printed beneath it. Beside the hospital logo was a photograph of me standing on their loading dock, holding my red wax pencil. The photograph had been taken 6 months earlier, when St. Vincent's loading dock flooded during a January thaw. I had spent 9 hours rerouting deliveries through the old ambulance bay. In the original picture, I was pointing at a water line on the concrete. Someone had cropped out the water. Where did you get this? I asked. It was attached to my onboarding packet. I clicked through the presentation. Bellwether's logo occupied the lower corner of every slide. The words seamless, optimized, and proven appeared often enough to make me suspicious before I reached the numbers. St. Vincent would open 22 new surgical suites Monday morning. Calvin's proposal reduced its total circulating inventory by 18% at the same time. Bellwether would collect used linen twice daily instead of once, wash it faster, and return it on narrower delivery windows. On paper, fewer sheets and gowns would sit idle in hospital storage. On paper, none of our dryers needed bearings. Go to slide 14, I said. Tyler did. Project leadership. Calvin Rusk, Regional Vice President, Denise Larkin, People in Transition Partner, Mara Vance, Senior Client Operations Specialist. Tyler's own name appeared under data support. He sat back. He showed me a different version. Print this. His eyebrows rose. You think it'll disappear? I think toner is cheap. The printer had reached page 6 when Calvin came through the dispatch office door at 11:37, early enough to catch us looking. He was carrying his suit jacket over one shoulder, sleeves rolled neatly to his elbows. Calvin was 44 and had the energetic, faintly sunburned look of someone who scheduled conference calls while running. He remembered spouses' names, asked drivers about their knees, and could walk a plant floor without making people feel inspected. He was also the best person I had ever met at turning someone else's caution into his own bravery. Mara, he glanced at the printer. Getting Tyler settled? I'm finding all kinds of things. Tyler stood. The St. Vincent presentation lists Mara as project lead. Senior Client Operations Specialist, Calvin corrected. I'm project lead. She wasn't informed. Calvin gave him a patient smile. You're new to this region, Tyler. Client language doesn't always mirror internal task assignments. The client thinks she's directing the conversion. The client thinks Bellwether is directing the conversion. My name is under a photograph of my face, I said. That slide establishes continuity. You have the relationship. Until 5. And Tyler will build on it. Was street. Vincent told I'd be gone? The patient smile left. "Let's talk privately." "No," Tyler said. Calvin turned toward him. Tyler swallowed but continued. "I'm being asked to assume the account. I need the answer too." For a moment, Calvin looked almost impressed. Then he closed the office door and lowered the blinds facing dispatch. The room became smaller and strangely yellow. "St. Vincent knows we are regionalizing account support," he said. "They do not need a personnel announcement every time we improve our structure." "They asked for me by name," I said. "It's in their conversion notes. You have always blurred the line between client service and client dependence." It landed because there was truth in it. I knew Lou at security took Tuesdays off to drive his mother to physical therapy. I knew the facility's director, Ruth Heller, distrusted polished forecasts because a previous vendor had left her surgical floors short on gowns during a flu surge. I knew which of St. Vincent's storage rooms had inaccurate scales and which department managers padded their orders. I had made myself useful by remembering what other people forgot. Sometimes I had made myself indispensable because usefulness felt safer than asking to be valued. Calvin saw that in me, and he knew how to press it. "This is exactly why integration is necessary," he said more gently. "No account should be built around one personality." I agree. That slowed him. I tapped the presentation. "Which is why you shouldn't promise that personality after you terminate her." Calvin took the pages from the printer. He read two, squared the stack, then placed it beside the blue severance folder. "The economics changed," he said. "Consolidation is happening throughout the industry. We either adapt before our clients force us to, or we lose margins until there's nothing left to protect." You could have involved the people who know the work and spent 6 months debating every attachment to the old system. 3 weeks would have caught the bed count. He glanced at Tyler. "What bed count?" 384, Tyler said. "The model uses current staffed beds, not the new surgical utilization. The wing adds surgical capacity, not inpatient beds. It adds recovery demand, isolation stock, warming blankets, and backup inventory," I said. "Your model also assumes 6 turns a week on operating room linen. St. Vincent averages 4.8. Calvin's mouth went flat. "Then correct the model." "Who?" "You and Tyler. That's what today is for." "With what authority?" "I can't approve PAR changes. Tyler can't commit plant overtime. Reggie hasn't received projected volume. Dispatch thinks Monday is a normal delivery. Those are communication gaps." "No, Calvin. Those are the project." He walked to the load board. My red box reflected faintly on his white shirt. "You've made your point," he said. "Erase that. When there's an owner." "I'm the owner. Operational owner. Me." "Then initial it." He looked at the pencil in my hand. Calvin signed things all day. Purchase orders, performance reviews, capital requests. Yet he understood exactly what my red box meant. It put a visible promise next to a visible name. He took the pencil and wrote CR in the corner. It was our first small victory, and it tasted like fear. "Good," I said. "Now I can train Tyler on escalation." Calvin dropped the pencil onto my desk. It rolled until the blue folder stopped it. At noon, Denise joined us in the small conference room overlooking the dryers. She brought 4 boxed salads, though nobody had asked Angela to join. Angela came anyway, carrying a bag of potato chips and the maintenance log. "Working lunch," she said, sitting beside me. "Culture." Calvin ignored that. He offered me 2 additional weeks at my current salary. I would report directly to him, support Tyler, and complete the St. Vincent conversion. My benefits would continue through the extension. Denise described it as a bridge. "What would my title be?" I asked. "Transition specialist," Calvin said. "What authority?" "You'd advise." "Who decides?" "I do." "What happens to the severance?" "It remains available if you complete the transition satisfactorily," Denise said. There it was. 2 weeks of carrying responsibility without authority, followed by a subjective test controlled by the same people who had created the emergency. And when St. Vincent asks whether I still lead the project? Calvin opened his salad. You tell them the truth. You are assisting with the transition. The truth starting when? He snapped the plastic lid harder than necessary. I'm trying to find a solution. For Monday. For everyone. Tyler had been studying the capacity sheet. If she accepts, do we delay implementation until the revised numbers are approved? Calvin looked at him. No. Then her being here doesn't solve the capacity issue. It gives us experienced oversight. You mean it gives you someone to blame? Angela said. Denise turned. This meeting concerns confidential personnel matters. So does my overtime. Angela, Calvin warned. She opened her chips. I can eat on the floor if you want Reggie in here asking why nobody told him about 22 operating rooms. Calvin's eyes closed for half a second. Real competence does not prevent mistakes. Sometimes it merely lets a person see the exact size of a mistake while choosing it. The conversion date came from St. Vincent, he said. The opening date did, I replied. The inventory reduction came from you. Because we are carrying nearly $400,000 of their linen. Then phase it. That pushes the savings out of quarter. Nobody spoke. The dryers vibrated through the conference room windows. On the floor below, a cart of folded sheets snagged on a cracked tile. 2 employees rocked it free without stopping their conversation. Calvin put down his fork. I'm not ashamed of being accountable for financial performance, he said. Financial performance keeps those people employed. It was the most honest thing he had said all day. I believed he cared about the plant. I also believed he wanted the permanent regional position, the larger bonus, and the chance to prove he could impose order on branches that had embarrassed corporate for years. Human motives rarely arrived one at a time. I'll finish today's handover, I said. I won't accept the extension. Denise folded her hands. Think carefully. I have. You haven't spoken to Evan. The use of his name was so precise that I felt it between my ribs. Angela stopped chewing. I looked at Denise. My husband isn't part of this meeting. No, but your decision affects more than your pride. Tyler stared down at the table. Calvin looked uncomfortable, which meant Denise had gone farther than he would have. I gathered the capacity sheets. My decision is no. Back at my desk, I completed every item on Denise's schedule. Tyler learned the route exceptions, the escalation ladder, the client contacts, and the ugly difference between inventory the system showed and inventory we could physically touch. I gave him the shared drive paths, open issue logs, and passwords I was authorized to transfer. At 3:20, he tried to ask how I would sequence Monday's recovery if the model failed. That's scenario planning, I said. It isn't in the handover. He rubbed both hands over his face. I know why you're saying that. Good. I also know who gets hurt if this goes wrong. So do I. Then help me. The words came out sharper than he intended. I looked through the glass at Angela, who was showing a driver something on the load board. Beyond her, Reggie crossed toward finishing with a wrench hooked through his belt. I had spent years stepping into gaps because the people on either side of them deserved better. Calvin was counting on that reflex. He had built his entire Monday around it. I opened the emergency planning directory. Here are the approved contingency procedures, I said. Read them. I'll answer questions about what they contain. Tyler understood the boundary. His expression said he disliked it, but he understood. We spent the next hour reviewing mutual aid contacts, rental inventory, route triage, and hospital escalation rules. The procedures were useful. They were also general. They did not tell him which competing plant manager would loan Bellwether Linen after Calvin had tried to underbid him, or which St. Vincent director could authorize a temporary substitution in surgical packs. Those relationships belonged to people, not Bellwether's server. At 4:40, Tyler printed the training log. 11 pages. Every module was marked complete. 16 open items remained. Denise returned with the severance folder. Sign the transfer certification, she said. The final page stated that Tyler had received all information necessary to assume full management of my portfolio without interruption. I crossed out that sentence. Below it, I wrote, "Scheduled handover completed. Operational readiness not certified. St. Vincent conversion owner, Calvin Rusk. 16 open items attached." I signed and passed it to Tyler. He read every word, then initialed beneath mine. Denise's face went still. "Tyler, that is unnecessary." "It's accurate. You are not qualified to assess readiness on your first day. Then I'm not qualified to certify it." Angela, watching from the dispatch floor, slowly raised her tea mug to her lips. Denise took the document. "Your severance will require additional review. You said the offer expired at 5. The agreement assumes good faith transition assistance. The log shows 6 hours of it. I'll contact you next week. I looked at the blue folder. 10 weeks of salary weighted inside, close enough to touch. Evan's equipment loan was due Tuesday. Our insurance deductible had reset in January. The roof over our bedroom made a tapping sound whenever rain came from the east. I left the folder on the desk. At 4:58, IT disabled my account. At 5, I unclipped the visitor badge and set it beside the keyboard. The red wax pencil went into my bag with the brass sharpener. Pearl's streak still crossed the back of my hand. Tyler walked me to the employee entrance. "I sent Calvin and Denise a written risk summary," he said. "Capacity discrepancy, missing approvals, outdated utilization, all of it. Keep your copy." I put it in the incident directory. "Keep another." He nodded. "I'm sorry. This isn't your apology to make." Outside, heat rose from the parking lot in visible waves. Evan was waiting in our truck because I had asked him to pick me up, afraid I might be too angry to drive safely. He saw the bag on my shoulder and tried to read my answer before I reached him. "Did you sign?" he asked. I got in and closed the door. "No." His hands tightened around the steering wheel. For 10 seconds, the only sound was the air conditioner rattling through a loose vent. Then he said, "Mara, tell me you didn't walk away from 10 weeks. They wanted me to certify a lie. They wanted you to sign a form. It was a lie on a form." He backed out too quickly, braked, and let a forklift pass between buildings. "I closed my shop because the numbers didn't work," he said. "I swallowed every piece of pride I had. You gotta close it on your terms. The instant I said it, I wanted it back." Evan's face changed, but he kept looking through the windshield. "At least one of us did," he said. We drove home without speaking. At 7:12, while rain began tapping from the east, my personal email chimed. It was an automated calendar invitation forwarded from my old Bellwether address before IT shut it down. Monday, 5 a.m., St. Vincent Conversion Command. Organizer, Calvin Rusk. Required attendee, Mara Vance. I stared at the invitation until the screen dimmed. Evan stood at the kitchen sink with his back to me, running water over a plate that was already clean. Rain tapped above our bedroom in the uneven rhythm we had been pretending not to hear for months. "They still have you on the schedule?" he asked. "Yes." "Are you going?" "No." He shut off the faucet. That came out fast. "It's the only answer I have." I forwarded the invitation to Denise with one sentence. "My employment ended today at 5 p.m. Please correct the attendee list and any client communication identifying me as project staff." Her response arrived 4 minutes later. Received. Not corrected. Not apologized for. Received. I put my phone face down and went into the garage. Evan's old table saw sat beneath a canvas cover, surrounded by clamps, offcuts, and cabinet doors that would never belong to the kitchens they had been measured for. He had sold the dust collector and the edge bander, but kept the saw because selling the last serious tool felt too much like admitting the shop had been a mistake. I had understood that until I used it against him in the truck. He appeared in the doorway while I was running my hand over the canvas. "I'm sorry," I said. "For which part?" "The part where I acted like you chose what happened." He leaned against the frame. "I did choose. After the bank and 2 clients chose first. Still signed my name. I waited." He looked toward the ceiling when the rain struck harder. "I'm not asking you to lie for severance." "I know." I'm asking what happens if being right costs us money we don't have. That's what I'm trying to figure out. No, you're trying to figure out how to make them admit you're right. Those aren't the same thing. It hurt because he knew me well enough to separate the two. I sat on a stack of unfinished drawer boxes. They put my name in front of St. Vincent after firing me. Can you prove it? I saw the presentation. Do you have it? No. Then you saw it. I pictured Calvin lifting the pages from the printer and squaring the stack. I had left with my training log, but not a copy of the presentation. Bellwether's client materials belonged to Bellwether. Taking them would have given Denise something clean to accuse me of. I have the calendar invitation, I said. I have my email telling them to correct it. Good. That doesn't get the severance back. No. He pulled another drawer box toward him and sat. But it means you didn't come home with nothing. On Saturday morning, Evan climbed onto the roof with 2 tubes of sealant and the careful, resentful concentration he once gave walnut face frames. I stood at the foot of the ladder, passing tools up when he asked. We did not discuss Bellwether until he came down. I can sell the saw, he said. No. It would cover 2 loan payments. And then what? I stopped keeping a 900-pound monument to my feelings in the garage. That saw made our kitchen. That saw made 17 kitchens. It also made me lie awake every night for a year. He wiped sealant from his thumb. Maybe there's a difference between keeping what proves you were good and keeping what still helps you work. I thought about my red pencil in the side pocket of my bag. At noon, I built a household cash flow sheet. We could last 4 months if we sold the saw, canceled the roofing contractor, switched to catastrophic insurance after Bellwether's coverage ended, and nothing happened to our furnace, truck, teeth, or bodies. At 2, Denise emailed a formal notice stating that my severance was under review because of potentially incomplete knowledge transfer. I attached the 11-page log, Tyler's initials, and her own 6-hour schedule to my response. Then I closed the laptop. I did not write the explanation she wanted. Explanations gave Denise language to edit. Sunday passed without Bellwether. Evan and I drove the table saw to a restoration contractor he knew in Ashland. The contractor paid $700 less than Evan had hoped. Evan took the cash anyway and made the man promise to replace the drive belt before using it. On the way home, he stopped at a hardware store and bought me a package of red wax pencils. You already have one, he said when he handed them to me in the parking lot. But apparently, we're selling monuments. I laughed hard enough that a woman loading mulch looked over. At 4:50 Monday morning, I woke before my alarm. Rain had stopped. The house felt suspended in the blue light before sunrise. Evan slept with one hand curled near his face. I went downstairs, made coffee, and did not open my laptop. At 5:20, St. Vincent's first linen trailer reached the east dock. I knew because Bellwether's automated client portal sent delivery notices to the email address on file, and nobody had removed mine. I logged out without opening the details and emailed support requesting that my access be terminated. At 6:10, Tyler sent a text. For the record, conversion started. No revised model approved. Calvin instructed us to use base plan. I read it once and answered, "Document instructions through company channels. Do not send me operational information." He replied with a thumbs up. At 6:45, the Bellwether portal stopped recognizing my password. Evan came downstairs dressed for a church restoration job, took one look at me, and moved the coffee pot out of my reach. "You've had enough." "I've had 2 cups." "You've had enough for someone pretending she isn't running a hospital conversion from our breakfast table." "I'm not running anything." "Your left eye is twitching in operational Morse code." I folded my arms. He poured the remaining coffee into a travel mug. "What happens now?" "If their numbers are wrong, departments start burning through clean inventory faster than the plant replaces it." "When?" "Depends on case volume. Afternoon, maybe tomorrow." "And if the machines cooperate?" "They might get away with it." That possibility had followed me all weekend. Calvin might force the plan through. Reggie might coax extra capacity from aging equipment. Angela might repair route gaps before they became visible. Tyler might be smart enough to learn while moving. St. Vincent might have a light surgical schedule. If everything held, Calvin would show his savings, I would look obstructionist, and Denise would have all the justification she needed to reduce my severance. I wanted the plan to fail enough to expose them. I wanted it to succeed enough to spare everyone else. That contradiction sat in my stomach like spoiled milk. At 8:17, Reggie's wife posted a photograph online of a traffic jam near the river. Behind the cars, steam rose thicker than usual from Bellwether's roof vents. I enlarged the picture before I could stop myself. Nothing in the image proved anything. At 9:30, I applied for an operations director position at a regional food distributor. The application asked why I had left Bellwether. Organizational restructuring, I wrote. At 10:02, an email arrived from Ruth Heller at St. Vincent. Mara, please call me when available regarding today's conversion. I carried the laptop into the garage, where a clean rectangle on the concrete marked the place Evan's saw had stood. Ruth answered on the first ring. "Tell me you're at the plant," she said. "I'm not employed by Bellwether." Silence. Then, very carefully, "Since when?" "Friday at 5. Calvin said your role was being regionalized. It was eliminated. He told us you would personally oversee today's conversion." I saw a presentation that said the same. "Are you on leave? Consulting? What is the actual arrangement?" "There is no arrangement." Ruth inhaled through her nose. I had heard that sound twice before. Once when a vendor delivered pediatric gowns to an orthopedic floor, and once when a contractor drilled through a chilled water line. "Who is Tyler Crow?" she asked. "My replacement. He says he's an integration analyst. That is his title. Is he qualified? He's capable. He's also new to acute care linen operations. Who is handling the crisis? What happened? Bellwether's tunnel washer is down. They missed the 7:30 surgical delivery, sent our isolation stock to the wrong building, and cut the standing inventory before the new wing opened. Calvin keeps telling me the recovery plan is being finalized. Tyler asked me to approve substituting flat sheets for draw sheets and could not tell me whether the replacement inventory would arrive sterile packed. Flat sheets don't arrive sterile packed either. That was my concern. I closed my eyes. A tunnel washer failure alone was manageable. The plant had smaller washer extractors, and mutual aid agreements could supply basic linen. But reduced hospital inventory had removed the cushion that made a breakdown ordinary. Every late cart now mattered. "Ruth, I can't advise you on Bellwether's operation. I'm asking about my hospital." And Bellwether would say I'm interfering with a former client. "You are the specialist named in our approved conversion plan." Without my approval. That is a problem between you and Bellwether. My problem is that we have 12 surgical suites active, another 10 opening this afternoon, and 63 warming blankets in the building. The old wing used almost that many by lunch on a heavy day. Has your team declared an internal conservation level? I asked. I thought you couldn't advise me. I can ask what your own policy says. A pause. Level 1, she said. Review the threshold for Level 2. Your nursing operations director can decide whether you've met it. I heard paper moving. That is more useful than anything Calvin has said in 2 hours. Ruth. I know. You don't work for them. I'm sorry. So am I. She ended the call. At 10:20, Denise emailed me. Please refrain from direct client contact while your separation terms remain under review. I stared at the sentence, then forwarded Ruth's original email and wrote, The client contacted me because Bellwether represented me as project staff. Confirm in writing that Bellwether has corrected that representation. Denise did not answer. At Bellwether, Tyler was learning what happened when a general contingency plan collided with specific people. He would later show me the incident timeline. At 10:35, he recommended calling Midstate Textile for emergency inventory. Calvin rejected it because Midstate's owner, Jules Benton, had filed a pricing complaint after Bellwether undercut him on a hotel contract. At 10:41, Angela proposed splitting a hotel route to free a trailer. Calvin refused because the Grand Regency's regional manager was visiting. At 11:08, Reggie reported that the tunnel washer's discharge valve had cracked and the replacement part would not arrive until Tuesday. Calvin adapted as each option narrowed. He shifted volume to the smaller washers, authorized overtime, and arranged a rental truck. Those were reasonable moves. They were also too slow to replace the inventory St. Vincent had already consumed. At 11:30, he told Ruth that Mara's handover materials were guiding the recovery. Ruth asked Tyler one question: "Is Mara directing this?" Tyler said, "No, ma'am. Mara's employment ended Friday." At 11:46, Ruth's procurement office issued a formal notice under Section 8.4 of St. Vincent's service contract. During a major implementation failure, the hospital could require Bellwether to provide a mutually approved transition specialist at Bellwether's expense. Their named specialist was me. Calvin proposed Tyler. St. Vincent declined. Calvin proposed an outside consultant from Chicago who had designed Bellwether's regional model. St. Vincent declined again. At 12:03, Denise called. I let it ring until voicemail picked up. She called once more. I answered. "Mara," she said, "we need to discuss a short-term professional engagement." "Is my severance still under review?" "This is separate." "Good." "We need you on site at St. Vincent for the next 72 hours. You would be paid your equivalent hourly wage." "No." "Your prior rate plus 20%. "No." "You haven't heard the scope." "I heard it Friday. Responsibility without authority." Her voice hardened. "This is an opportunity to demonstrate the good faith that was missing from your handover. My handover documented the exact risk you ignored. We can debate that later. Right now, the client is specifically requesting you because you specifically promised me." Silence traveled over the line. "Send your requirements," she said. I opened a blank document. My hands were steady now. Emergency operational consulting, $375 an hour, 12-hour minimum paid in advance, travel billed separately, authority to communicate directly with Street, Vincent, Bellwether plant leadership, dispatch, and approved mutual aid providers. No representation that I was a Bellwether employee. Tyler's Friday risk summary preserved in the formal incident record. Work limited to stabilization, with further services requiring a new agreement. Evan read it over my shoulder. "You forgot meals," he said. "I can buy lunch for $375 an hour." "You always forget lunch." I added reasonable on-site expenses. Then I attached the proposal to a new email addressed to Denise and copied Calvin and Ruth. Subject: emergency consulting rate. I pressed send. Denise's reply came less than a minute later. "You cannot be serious." I took a new red wax pencil from the package Evan had bought me, sharpened it with the brass blade, and wrote across the printed proposal, "Received." I sent back 3 words: "I am serious." Denise began typing. The dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. Calvin called instead. I declined it and emailed all 3 of them. Proposal valid until 12:45 p.m. Work begins upon receipt of signed terms and advance payment. At 12:19, Ruth replied, "St. Vincent approves Mara Vance as the mutually acceptable transition specialist under Section 8.4. Bellwether remains responsible for associated costs." Evan read it twice. "She just bought them 26 minutes, he said. "She's good." At 12:31, Calvin sent a revised agreement. He had changed my rate to $200 an hour, removed the advance, and added a clause allowing Bellwether to direct all client communications. I marked the changes rejected and returned it. At 12:38, Denise wrote that my demands were inconsistent with industry standards. I answered, "Then select another specialist acceptable to St. Vincent." At 12:43, the original proposal arrived signed by Calvin. Denise sent payment confirmation 30 seconds later. The bank alert showed $4,500 pending. Evan pointed at it. "Is that real?" "It clears tomorrow." That is the most expensive Monday morning I've ever seen. It's about to become the longest. I changed into navy pants, a white shirt, and the steel-toed shoes Bellwether had neglected to collect Friday. Evan packed 2 sandwiches while I printed the agreement, the payment confirmation, and Denise's email requesting the engagement. I slid them into a plain black folder. The red wax pencil went into my shirt pocket. At the truck, Evan held out his hand for the keys. I can drive. I know. You'll spend the whole trip building routes in your head. I can do that while driving. That sentence is why I'm driving. I handed him the keys. St. Vincent's East Dock looked worse than it had during the flood. Empty carts stood in crooked rows. A rental truck blocked half the receiving lane, and 3 hospital employees were opening bundles on the concrete to see what Bellwether had actually sent. Lou at security came out of his booth before our truck stopped. "You're late," he said. "I stopped working here Friday." That explains why the morning went to hell. He handed me a temporary hospital credential. It said consultant beneath my name. The word made something settle inside me. Ruth met me in the dock office with Tyler and Calvin. She wore navy scrubs under a gray cardigan, as though she had dressed for 2 different emergencies and gotten both. Tyler's tie was gone. Calvin had sweat darkening the collar of his shirt. "You're here," Tyler said, "for 12 hours minimum." Calvin looked at the black folder under my arm. "We need to move quickly. We needed to move slowly 3 weeks ago." Ruth pointed toward the conference room. "You can invoice the argument later." Inside, a whiteboard listed shortages by department. Warming blankets were the worst, followed by draw sheets, isolation gowns, and surgical towels. The numbers had been rewritten so many times that blue marker stained the board like bruises. I put the consulting agreement beside Calvin. "Before I touch operations, we establish authority. I speak directly to St. Vincent, plant leadership, dispatch, and mutual aid providers. Tyler's Friday risk summary stays in the incident file." "It's there," Tyler said. Calvin's eyes moved toward him. "I checked," Tyler added. "Good. Who's running Bellwether's plant response?" "I am," Calvin said. "Who is sequencing production?" "Reggie." "Then Reggie runs production. You approve cost and client commitments." Ruth leaned over the shortage board. "And you?" "I coordinate the recovery until you have stable inventory or my agreement ends." "You have 18 hours, she said. "After that, I begin postponing scheduled cases." Calvin protested. "We can recover before then." Ruth capped her marker. "That was not optimism, that was a deadline. We started with what physically existed." Tyler's spreadsheets showed linen in the system that was actually sitting inside hospital departments, moving on trucks, trapped behind the broken tunnel washer, or mixed into unsorted soil loads. I had him split every number into 4 columns: verified clean, verified in transit, recoverable today, and theoretical. "Theoretical is doing a lot of work," he said. "It usually does." Angela joined by video from dispatch. Reggie stood beside her, his work shirt soaked through. Behind them, the red box around St. Vincent was still on the load board. Calvin's initials sat in the corner. "Tunnel status?" I asked. "Dead until the valve arrives," Reggie said. "Washer extractors can give you 21,000 pounds by midnight if finishing keeps up." "Can it?" "Depends what you send me." I asked Ruth to prioritize by patient function instead of department request. She brought in the nursing operations director, who moved the hospital to conservation level 2 and identified which scheduled procedures could use existing specialty packs. That reduced demand, but it did not create linen. "Mutual aid," I said. Calvin shook his head. "Midstate won't work with us. Midstate won't work with you." Ruth looked between us. "Will they work with Mara?" "I can ask." Jules Benton answered with machinery roaring behind him. "I heard you left Bellwether," he said. "Friday." "Then why are you calling from their disaster?" "Because they're paying my consulting rate." He laughed once. "Good for you. Still no." "I haven't asked yet." "You need warming blankets and draw sheets. Everybody within 50 miles knows. We can return verified quantities by Thursday. Tyler has the inventory ledger open. You'll get cart-level manifests at pickup and return." Calvin tried to take the Regency account with numbers that wouldn't cover my fuel. Calvin isn't asking. I looked at him across the table. He looked away first. "What are you asking?" Jules said. 90 warming blankets, 1,200 draw sheets, 400 isolation gowns, and whatever clean surgical towels you can spare without hurting your own clients. That's not a favor, that's a branch. It's 4 carts and a bad afternoon. 5 carts. 4 if we bag the towels. A long pause followed. 2 years earlier, Midstate had accidentally delivered 6 carts of its linen to one of our hotels. Calvin wanted to absorb the inventory against what he called market leakage. I had logged every piece and sent it back. Jules remembered. 800 draw sheets, he said. 60 blankets, gowns I can do. Towels depend on finishing. We'll take it. Who signs the manifest? Calvin authorizes the expense. Tyler verifies the count. I coordinate transfer. And if Bellwether loses my inventory? The signed agreement lists replacement cost. Calvin pulled a legal pad toward him. What replacement cost? The one you're about to approve. His jaw tightened. Ruth slid her copy of Section 8.4 across the table. Calvin signed. The inventory solved only half the problem. Midstate could have it ready in 90 minutes, but its drivers were already committed. Angela's voice came through the laptop. Nina can take the box truck. Nina hates the box truck, Tyler said automatically. Angela smiled. Look at you, learning. Darnell has Route 12, I said. His liftgate sticks. Fleet fixed it this morning after my maintenance log accidentally found its way to Calvin's boss. Calvin stared at the screen. Angela continued. Darnell can finish 12. Nina can make Midstate in an hour if nobody asks her to be cheerful. Send Nina, I said. For the next 6 hours, we worked the problem down instead of talking it up. Reggie changed wash sequencing so the small machines handled isolation gowns and draw sheets before bulk flat linen. Ruth authorized Bellwether to delay lower priority stock and approved temporary color substitutions where patient care policy allowed them. Angela split 2 routes, moved the Grand Regency's afternoon delivery after its housekeeping director confirmed adequate shelves, and found a driver who could bring empty carts back to the plant. Tyler kept the live board. Every commitment had a name, a time, and a source. When Calvin said a trailer was 15 minutes away, Tyler asked for the driver's location. When someone reported 8 carts available, he asked whether they were clean, dirty, or theoretical. At 6:15, Nina backed the box truck into the old ambulance bay because the east dock was blocked. She climbed out wearing mirrored sunglasses and looked at Tyler. You the man who wrote that I hate my truck? I wrote that you hate this truck. Good. Words matter. The first Midstate cart held warming blankets. Lou unlocked the service corridor. Hospital staff moved the carts upstairs while Ruth updated the shortage board. 63 became 123. For the first time all day, she erased more than she wrote. Calvin cornered me beside the freight elevator. You're making this more adversarial than it needs to be. I'm moving linen. You're documenting every conversation. That's how we know what was promised. You worked here 11 years. You know recovery gets messy. I know mess is where people rewrite history. His face hardened. You think this makes you look good? I think street. Vincent needs blankets. He lowered his voice. Corporate will see that you refused a reasonable extension and then charged 5 times your wage to solve the same problem. My wage paid for ongoing employment, benefits, and work within my authority. This rate pays for an emergency, uncertainty, and cleaning up decisions I warned you about. You could have prevented this. So could you. The freight elevator opened. Nina rolled out an empty cart and looked from him to me. Is this hallway for working or feelings? Calvin stepped aside. By 10 that night, St. Vincent had enough verified inventory to cover overnight demand. Reggie's teams had restored a limited wash cycle through the smaller machines. Darnell's repaired liftgate handled 2 emergency exchanges without trapping anyone's fingers. Tyler's board showed the remaining deficit concentrated in items Midstate could supply by morning. Ruth reviewed the numbers, then drew a line beneath them. "Stable," she said. "Conditional on the 6 a.m. delivery." "I'll stay through receipt," I said. Calvin rubbed his eyes. "That takes you beyond 12 hours. Yes, you have to notify me before exceeding the minimum." I opened the signed agreement. "Hourly after 12. Work continues until the client is stable or you release me." Ruth almost smiled. At 3 in the morning, Tyler and I sat on the dock eating Evan's flattened sandwiches. His pivot table mug had somehow survived the day and now held vending machine coffee. "I thought you were trying to make me fail," he said. "I was trying to stop them from making your failure useful." I didn't understand the difference Friday. Neither did I at your age. I'm 36. Then there's still hope. He looked toward the carts lined beneath the fluorescent lights. "Calvin told me to delete my risk summary from the presentation folder. I moved a copy into the incident directory before I answered him." "What did you answer?" "That deletion would violate the record preservation term in your agreement." I took another bite of my sandwich. "Angela's going to let you stay past lunch." At 6:08, Mid-State's final truck arrived. Tyler and Ruth verified every cart. The new surgical wing opened with enough working inventory for the day and a phased restoration plan for the rest of the week. My total time came to 17 and a half hours. Denise paid the remaining balance before noon. The incident review took 3 weeks. It was built from ordinary, stubborn things: Tyler's risk summary, my training log, the capacity reports I had submitted, Reggie's maintenance history, Angela's route records, Ruth's emails, and Calvin's initials inside the red box. St. Vincent kept its base contract but placed the expansion volume on hold until Bellwether replaced the conversion model and assigned qualified support. That cost Calvin the savings he had accelerated and the permanent regional appointment he wanted. He remained with Bellwether in a narrower operations role, where financial changes required branch sign-off. Denise's review concluded that my handover had been complete and my severance was owed. After St. Vincent questioned why the specialist named in its plan had received a visitor badge on her last day, corporate removed operational separations from Denise's authority. She stayed in human resources, handling benefits and policy work with considerably fewer opportunities to define reality alone. Tyler kept the job. He changed the title on the load board to Regional Transition Manager and refused to certify conversions until plant supervisors signed the capacity assumptions. Evan and I used the consulting payment to cover the equipment loan and repair the roof properly. Selling the saw still hurt him. Losing Bellwether still hurt me. Relief did not erase either thing, but it gave us room to stop using our wounds as weapons. My application to the food distributor was rejected. Ruth referred me to a rehabilitation hospital that needed help redesigning its delivery schedule. Jules sent a hotel operator after that. The work came unevenly, 3 busy weeks, then 10 quiet days, but it was mine to price and mine to refuse. 4 months later, I returned to St. Vincent for a planned inventory audit. The East Dock was dry. Lou waved me through without leaving his booth. Tyler had joined us from Bellwether, carrying his laptop and the same ridiculous mug. At the conference table, I sharpened a fresh red wax pencil with the brass blade on my key ring. A red curl fell onto my invoice. Ruth checked the final load figures and pushed the page back to me. "Confirmed," she said. I drew one clean circle beside the total. My name was printed at the top. My consulting rate was directly beneath it.